Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, Mike Waltz is not losing his job. President Trump standing by his national security advisor while dismissing concerns over an accidental intel leak to a reporter. Who and what the president is blaming for this incident, and what's next in investigations. Iris Tao at the White House. For the first time ever, transnational criminal organizations top the list of the intel community's annual worldwide threat assessment. That's as a Senate hearing on those threats quickly turned to reports of the Signal app intel leak. Luis Martinez brings us the key moments from today's hearing. And China remains the top military and cyber threat to the U.S. That's according to a report by U.S. intelligence agencies published ahead of today's hearing. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson of Iowa joins us to discuss her legislative efforts to counter the Chinese regime and why she's making the China issue a key focus in Congress. Will lawmakers reach a self-imposed deadline on enacting Trump's key policies? House leaders are putting pressure on their Senate colleagues as the two chambers have yet to agree on a unified path forward for budget plans. Lena Weisskopf reports. Russia and Ukraine officially agree on the details of a limited ceasefire. Arian Pazdar has what the deal includes and the statement from the U.S. which mediated the truce.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump says no classified information was shared, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz should not apologize for an accidental leak of Houthi strike plans to a reporter. It comes as Democrats question the administration's handling of information, while Waltz says he's never contacted the reporter in focus. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
It's just something that can happen. It can happen.
Attending a Tuesday meeting, President Trump blames the latest security leak on what he calls imperfect technology and limitations officials face when they're just not able to sit face-to-face in a secure space.
That's one of the prices you pay when you're not sitting in the Situation Room.
It comes as some Democratic lawmakers are demanding resignations of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and even Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Had that information gotten to the Houthis, American pilots could have been shot down.
That's after the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic was inadvertently added to a Signal chat group where top officials were discussing plans to strike the Houthis. But the president standing by his national security advisor.
No, I don't think he should apologize. I think he's doing his best. It's equipment and technology that's not perfect, and probably he won't be using it again, at least not in the very near future. What do you think?
Yes, sir. I agree with you. Let's get everybody in the room whenever possible.
And Waltz stressing he's never talked to that reporter before, saying they will look into how he even got in.
This one in particular, I've never met, don't know. We are looking into and reviewing how the heck he got into this room.
Earlier on Tuesday, President Trump said it's one of Walz's staffers who was on Walz's phone and added that magazine editor. The president also criticized the media, alleging,
you know, they've made a big deal out of this because we've had 2 perfect months.
The White House, meanwhile, is emphasizing the success of the Houthi strikes earlier this month, saying the point is that they killed terrorists who targeted U.S. troops and vessels. When it comes to the Signal app, though, President Trump says the administration might not use it much going forward, adding that there will be a probe looking into how secure this encrypted messaging app really is. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Intelligence leaders today testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee after top officials unintentionally included a journalist in a group chat about highly sensitive plans possibly involving bombing Houthi targets in Yemen. The hearing was convened to discuss worldwide threats, but it quickly turned to reports of the breach. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
As the world became more dangerous in recent years, our intelligence agencies got more politicized, more bureaucratic, and more focused on promulgating opinions rather than gathering facts. After years of drift, the intelligence community must recommit to its core mission of collecting clandestine intelligence from adversaries whose main objective is to destroy our nation and our way of life.
For the first time, transnational criminal organizations like cartels and criminal gangs topped the list of threats listed by the intelligence community in their annual worldwide threats hearing, followed by the Chinese Communist Party and Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice Chairman.
The witness will suspend. So that protester was a code pink lunatic saying the greatest threat to world peace is funding Israel. I will observe, for the benefit of the audience here on television, that Code Pink is funded by Communist China as well, which simply illustrates, speak up now if you want to be removed as well, whoever's saying that.
Republican senators asked the intelligence chiefs about the nexus in between Russia, North Korea, Iran, and the Chinese Communist Party and transnational criminal organizations, while Democratic senators questioned the intelligence chiefs over reports of alleged mishandling of classified information.
We stunningly learned that senior members of this administration, and according to reports, two of our witnesses here today were members of a group chat that discussed highly sensitive and likely classified information.
Did Jeff Goldberg somehow, did he create a hoax that allowed him to become part of this signal thread? Please answer the question. You don't insult the intelligence of the American people. Did he invite himself to the signal thread?
I don't know how he was invited, but clearly he was
added. Clearly it was. Finish your sentence, please.
Clearly he was added to the signal group. Your question is,
you don't know that the president's national security advisor invited him to join the signal thread? Everybody in America knows that.
Director Gabbard, I didn't intend to get into the Jeffrey Goldberg story, but something you said has sort of puzzled me. According to open source reporting at 11:44 on the morning of March 15th, Secretary Hegseth put into this group text a detailed operation plan, including targets, the weapons we were going to be using, attack sequences, and timing. And yet you've testified that nothing in that chain was classified. Wouldn't that be classified? What if that had been made public that morning before the attack took place?
Senator, I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time.
So,
and I
so
defer,
the attack sequencing and timing and weapons and targets you don't consider to should have been classified?
I defer
or
to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council on that question.
Well, you're the head of you're the head of the intelligence community. You're supposed to know about classifications. So your testimony very clearly today is that nothing was in that set of texts that were classified.
The intelligence chiefs denied the mishandling of classified information, but Democratic lawmakers are calling for the resignation of Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth.
so my communications, to be clear, in a signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Well, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth should resign. He recklessly texted operational details of military strikes, including time, place, location, and sequencing of those strikes, to a journalist.
FBI Director Kash Patel noted that last year 54,000 American citizens died of fentanyl overdose, and the Chinese Communist Party is complicit in allowing the flow of precursors to the drug to fall in the hands of transnational criminal organizations. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
China remains the top military and cyber threat to the U.S. That's according to a report by U.S. intelligence agencies published today ahead of testimonies from Trump's intelligence chiefs on Capitol Hill. The report says Beijing is making steady but uneven progress on capabilities it could use to capture Taiwan, and that China has the ability to hit the U.S. with conventional weapons, compromise U.S. infrastructure through cyber attacks, and target U.S. assets in space. Joining now to discuss this report and the threat of the Chinese regime poses is Republican Congresswoman Ashley Hinson of Iowa. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you here. Now, that new report says, quote, China almost certainly has a multifaceted national level strategy designed to displace the United States as the world's most influential AI power by 2030. Given your work with the House Select Committee on the CCP, how well is the U.S. responding to such a threat, especially in the AI field?
Yeah, well, certainly that's at the root of most of the work we are doing on the committee. The committee was stood up with the whole goal of making sure that the United States can continue to be competitive on the global stage with our adversaries, including the Chinese Communist Party. So when it comes to chips and AI, we've been having a number of conversations about what policies we need to put in place so that we're not limiting our own advancement of AI. And we're also holding the Chinese accountable for how they're trying to get around our trade laws and any duties and tariffs that we may have in place. So I've introduced legislation specifically targeting the trade enforcement because we're seeing that obviously escalate in addition to the hacking capabilities of the Chinese Communist Party. But you're right, this is all a part of a big strategy that they are executing on the United States. They have made it very, very clear that they want to be the global superpower, economic, social, and military by 2049, and that is what President Xi has said. So we need to be eyes wide open about what policy we need to enact.
And Congresswoman, speaking of the CCP threat, there's been growing concerns over transnational repression or the long arm of the CCP, even here on U.S. soil. Now, you have a bill called the Expel Illegal Chinese Police Act to impose sanctions on Chinese police institutions operating in the U.S. First, how is the Chinese regime getting away with effectively running police stations on U.S. soil? How will this bill put an end to that?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, it's about spotlighting what they have been able to do. They never should have been able to set these up in the first place, but what they are doing is not only spying on the American people, but using these rogue police stations to then harass their own citizens who have left the oppressive regime that the CCP continues to run in communist China. So we need to make sure we're finding anybody who's been involved with this, that we're actually holding them accountable, and then we're expelling them from the country because they never should have been able to get away with this in the first place. So some mechanisms in the bill, and I'm proud to work with Senator Cotton on this piece of legislation, but some mechanisms include visa restrictions, freezing of assets, making sure that it's very, very difficult for them to actually have the resources available to prop up these rogue and illicit police stations. One example was, of course, very public in New York, but we know that they are trying to do this all over the country to be, again, collect information on the American people and continue to harass their own citizens.
And Congresswoman, another one of your bills is the bipartisan Securing American Agriculture Act to prevent China from controlling the U.S. food supply chain, specifically the amino acids in animal feed. Now, zooming out a bit here, the Council on Foreign Relations says U.S. exports, especially those in the agricultural sectors, will decline in the short term due to retaliatory tariffs from China, given China's history of targeting the sector in response to Trump's tariffs, as we saw in his first term. What would you say to those in this industry who are concerned about losing market access?
Well, we have to do something in this space. This is, again, food security, which is national security for us. And if China is able to pull these levers and control the supply in the way that they do, they've taken huge amounts of market for animal feed additives and, of course, things that we need to be able to grow healthy crops here in the United States. So I think it's quite indicative that the Chinese would not sign on to a UN resolution saying that they would not use food as war a few years ago. 91 member countries at the UN did. China did not. And I think that's pretty telling as to their plans for this portion of our supply chain. So, again, our bill is targeted on making sure USDA actually knows what our vulnerabilities are in this space, and then we can address those, rehome and reshore or friendshore as many of those as possible so that we can continue to have a robust and healthy food supply here in the United States.
And on that note, Congresswoman, you have several bills with the goal of holding the Chinese regime accountable. Talk to us about why this is such a focus for you in Congress.
Because, frankly, they've been ripping off the American people for decades, and we've kind of let it happen. And so I think it's high time we actually take some really stern action to make sure that they are held accountable for that. You know, the piece of legislation I referenced on combating trade crimes. They're forcing American companies out of business. This is about American workers and protecting all that they do to help keep this country great. not so that they can continue to be undermined by the CCP. So we've seen those malign practices, whether it's duty evasion, tariff evasion, or one of the most glaring, egregious examples, transnational shipment. The law enforcement actually raided a company in the United States, in Ohio, that was complicit in this. They were relabeling these parts and marketing them to get around our trade laws. And we know that the Chinese continue to do this, not only through Canada and Mexico, but many other countries in the South Pacific as well. So we need to make sure we have the resources available to be able to go after them and hold them accountable, because it's costing our businesses billions of dollars a year. It's also costing American workers.
And expanding on that, why do you think countering the China threat is an area, some might say the only area, seeing bipartisan support?
It is a tumultuous time on the Hill, I can say that for certain, but I think the reason you're seeing such great work come out of our committee in a bipartisan way is because we all realize what a threat the CCP actually is to the United States. I would echo what those national intelligence officials were saying earlier about that report. They are a huge threat to the United States, and that doesn't take a Republican or Democrat to realize that. That just takes an American and some good old common sense. So that's exactly what we're focused on in working together on this committee, and I'm very pleased, and I have developed some great relationships with colleagues across the aisle to make sure we're actually focusing on the policy that we need to counter not only the military advancements, the hacking, as you mentioned, the AI advancements, but also agriculture and issues that affect American workers and producers every single day.
Very important indeed. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, thank you so much for your time. And the clock is ticking for Republican lawmakers to meet their self-imposed deadline to pass a big budget bill packed with Trump's policies. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the update.
House and Senate Republicans are tasked with finding unity on which budget plan will ultimately carry President Trump's priorities on taxes, energy policy, border security, and more. Remember, both chambers passed separate budget resolutions with different fiscal frameworks, but the leaders from both chambers never worked out which one would ultimately take the lead. Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson says he's in close talks with Senate Republican leader John Thune to find consensus. All of them meeting at the White House this afternoon to discuss. Here's Johnson.
We're all united on the mission, and there's been different ideas about how to complete the mission, but I think it's all coming together now. This week will be pivotal. We have a big meeting at the White House later today with the leaders in both chambers, Republican leaders, to unite and get this thing done.
Speaker Johnson says he wants to pass this budget reconciliation bill by Easter at the earliest, but told reporters that it's not a big deal for them if they're not able to meet that self-imposed deadline, because he says they're still working as fast as they possibly can. Now throwing another factor into the mix is the House Freedom Caucus. Now, some members of this caucus, they want to make sure all of Biden's Inflation Reduction Act is ripped away as part of this reconciliation bill. Then remember, House Speaker Mike Johnson is carrying a very slim majority in Congress, so every proposal put forth carries weight and carries the possibility of whether or not this budget reconciliation process can move forward. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
President Trump today taking several executive actions on a wide range of issues, including a memo requiring the FBI to declassify documents related to the Crossfire hurricane probe. The investigation kicked off in 2016. It was seeking information on whether members of the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to secure the election victory. The probe wrapped up without providing any incriminating evidence. Also today, President Trump signed an executive order with a focus on election integrity. The order seeks to eliminate illegal immigrants from voter rolls by requiring proof of citizenship on voter registration forms. States that don't comply with the order will see a decrease in federal funding. Russia and Ukraine officially agree on the details of a limited ceasefire. Attacks on energy facilities and ships in the Black Sea are now supposed to stop. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has the Ukraine update, starting with the battlefield.
A Russian attack on Ukraine's northeastern city of Sumy reportedly injured at least 99 people, including 17 children. That's according to Ukrainian officials who gave an update on the Monday attack, as the injury toll keeps rising. An 18-year-old Sumy resident says she previously asked God to stay alive amid the attacks.
It's the most frightening thing that can happen when you don't know whether or not you'll die today.
A number of residential buildings, schools and more have also been damaged during the attack. Now, the attack comes as ceasefire talks enter the third day in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. US, Ukrainian and Russian officials are starting to make progress and find middle ground. The US says it made separate agreements with Russia and Ukraine to guarantee safe navigation in the Black Sea. Safe navigation in the Black Sea will help restore Russia's access to the global market for agriculture exports. President Trump suggests he's optimistic that the maritime ceasefire will be easy to uphold, as third-party countries will help guarantee the truce.
That'll be resolved. That's actually, as bad as it is, that's the least of the problems. So we'll get that resolved. And we are being aided by other countries too.
Kyiv and Moscow also agreed to stop attacks on energy facilities in the two countries. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that, in his understanding, the ceasefire is effective immediately.
As of today, it sounds like this. Neither side uses weapons against the energy system of the other side.
But Russia announced that the Black Sea Agreement will go into effect only after certain sanctions on its banks are lifted. The US says it will now continue facilitating talks on both sides to expand on the truce and achieve a lasting peace. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Coming up, a federal commission releases an annual report on religious freedom around the globe. They name countries of particular concern, including China and Nicaragua, over alleged hostility against freedom of belief. Jason Blair has the key takeaways. And the European Union recently approved the use of insect-based flour in everyday foods like bread and pasta. David Vivez hears from some Europeans who share their thoughts on the idea of eating bugs after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom releases its annual report. They recommend countries of particular concern to the State Department for allegedly violating people's freedom of belief. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Religious freedom conditions around the world do not remain stagnant, and individuals and communities continue to suffer profoundly at the hands of governments and non-state actors.
The State Department's Office on International Religious Freedom releases its annual report.
USCIRF's annual report focuses on two groups of countries that we recommend the State Department designate as countries of particular concern, or CPCs. And those we recommend the State Department should place on its special watch list, or SWL.
The 2025 report recommends 16 countries to be put on CPC status, including Burma, China, Cuba, Eritrea, Iran, Nicaragua, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan.
CPCs are countries whose governments engage or tolerate systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom.
During the gathering, numerous members of Congress gave remarks.
The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has issued its annual report documenting and holding accountable governments who impinge on what is really a core human value and a core American value: the right to choose freely what religion to practice, if any, and to practice it according to their conviction.
For decades, the CCP has carried out the sinicization of religion, which is a full-scale assault on faith and the courageous Chinese people who choose to believe in a power higher than communism. The CCP has also been rewriting the Bible and other sacred texts, not to clarify them, but to corrupt them, twisting spiritual truth into communist propaganda.
This year, we see the heavy human toll taken by acceleration of the forces of autocracy, bigotry, and violence, from the genocide of millions of Uyghurs by the Communist Chinese Party, for their oppression of religious freedom in Tibet, suppressing religious freedom, freedom of language and education and culture in Tibet.
The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom is an independent and bipartisan federal government commission. They monitor the universal right to freedom of religion and belief around the world. It was created by the 1998 International Religious Freedom Act, or IRFA. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Denmark's prime minister said today the U.S. is exerting unacceptable pressure on Greenland. The comments come ahead of a visit by Second Lady Usha Vance, which will also include White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Energy Secretary Chris Wright. And Vice President J.D. Vance said this afternoon that he'll also be accompanying the Second Lady to Greenland. President Trump yesterday repeated that the vast island was important for U.S. national security. Trump also said his administration was working with people in Greenland who want something to happen, but did not elaborate. The prime minister says the visit is clearly not about what Greenland needs or wants. But he says Denmark does not oppose ties with the United States. The Danish leader cited a 1951 bilateral agreement which established U.S. rights to move freely and construct military bases in Greenland, given Denmark and Greenland are notified.
Well, not provocation. This is friendliness, not provocation. We're dealing with a lot of people from Greenland that would like to see something happen with respect to their being properly protected and properly taken care of. They're calling us, we're not calling them. I think it's important. It's important from the standpoint of international security. And if you look at the ships outside of Greenland, you have Russia, you have China, you have lots of different people and lots of different places, and it cannot go on the way it is. It's not going to go on the way it is. I'll make a statement. It's not going to happen.
The European Union has approved the use of insect-based flour in everyday foods. However, the decision has sparked mixed reaction as the idea of eating bugs remains unpopular on the continent. NTD's international correspondent David Vives reports from Paris.
Bugs might be on the menu for all European citizens who eat bread or processed food. About a month ago, the European Union approved the use of flour made from larvae. The insect-based flour can be used in bread, pasta, pastries and more. This insect powder cannot exceed up to 4% in 100 grams of the product composition. The decision comes as a way to meet sustainable development goals and targets to limit climate change. Sustainable protein sources would need to play a part. The use of larvae must be mentioned on product labels, including a note regarding potential allergies. However, this topic is controversial and has been met with mixed reactions.
I
don't agree, because we have enough great products in France. We've got good food. We have good meat from farmers who work well. We have good vegetables, good fruit. Why should bugs even be a thing? We don't need that.
I think I'll check to see what I'm eating, exactly what products I'm buying, to be sure of what I'm buying and to know what I'm eating.
I don't think it would bother me in the sense that I'd eat without any problem if it didn't affect the taste.
Let's be honest, people won't stop eating cakes whatever there's inside. But if we add this worm-based flour, it introduces yet another ingredient that could potentially be allergenic or even disgusting. I'm the father of 2 children, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I can't see myself saying to them, "Here, I'm going to make you a cake with worm-based flour."
In February, Europe's top insect farming company based in France, Insect, went bankrupt despite a $600 million investment to make mealworms a staple food. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Coming up, major crime in the New York City subway system is going down, according to the NYPD, but New Yorkers still don't feel safe. Chris Spears speaks with the leader of a civic group that's asking the federal government for help. And the bankruptcy of 23andMe marks the downfall of the once up-and-coming biotech company. The fallout from a data breach renews concerns about personal information. More on that when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A New York City civic group is calling on Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to address subway safety in the Big Apple. Passengers United publishing their letter to Duffy, who said New York needs to clean up their mass transit system. He says that's necessary if New York expects commuters to use the system after the city's congestion pricing law took effect this January. Duffy recently threatened to withhold funding from the MTA until subways are safe. He even used some profane language to describe the subway system. NTD's Chris Beers spoke with the founding president of Passengers United for more on their recent letter to the Transportation Secretary.
Charlton D'Souza, founding president of Passengers United, thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, why did you write this letter to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy? What's the purpose of it?
We want accountability in the subway system. We agree with him. He's absolutely right. The New York City subway system is it's a mess. It's not safe down there. And, you know, we ride the subway system every day. We see what's going on down there. I've been personally assaulted 3 times. I know of other people who have been assaulted, punched in the face, spit at, had urine thrown at them. Every day on the news, you hear a different plan. The governor will come out and say, we're going to add more police, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then a few weeks later, everything goes back to normal. There's no accountability. It's a revolving door of criminals getting rearrested and rearrested. I would not even depend on the crime stats because they're not reliable, they're not accurate. We just had an NYPD captain in District 20 in Queens who was removed from his job and reassigned because he was misreporting the crime stats.
What's it like to ride in the New York City subway system these days?
Scary. You know, I ride the subway system at all hours. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that you could be a victim anywhere, at any time, at any location. It doesn't matter whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're in a bad area, a good area. And a lot of the robberies, surprisingly, are not happening in the South Bronx. They're actually happening in Midtown Manhattan. They're happening in well-to-do neighborhoods. Subway crime, believe it or not, is becoming a national issue. If you look at what's going on in Philadelphia, Philadelphia's had a really bad crime wave. Same thing in San Francisco with the BOT system. Los Angeles's metro, they're going through a situation. Chicago, they've had shootings on the L. So I feel like this is a national problem that's going on with the crime.
What needs to happen to make people feel safe to ride the subways in New York City again?
What needs to happen is the National Guard needs to be called in. I think the best thing to do is bring in the Federal Transit Administration security team like we have at the airports, search people, and what the police and the National Guard need to do in the subway system is dress up in straitjackets, literally, so they cannot be pricked by anything. Go in the subway stations like strike teams and remove these individuals out of the system. Just remove them, the worst of the worst, and just send them, you know, either to a hospital, a warming center, or for the criminals that, you know, are just committing crimes, just put them in jail. And the judges keep re-releasing these people. We have some criminals in the subway system who've been arrested 45 or 42 times. I mean, this is deeply disturbing.
Charlton D'Souza, thank you so much for your time.
23andMe has filed for bankruptcy, marking the downfall of the up-and-coming biotech company. The fallout from a data breach and weak demand for its ancestry testing kits is renewing concerns and questions about how that information was used. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the broader privacy concerns.
In 2021, 23andMe went public at a $3.5 billion valuation. But a 5-month-long data breach 2 years later exposed the personal data of nearly 7 million customers, a huge blow to the company's reputation.
If you think about the way that 23andMe essentially made its money, it was through the acquisition or the collection of really sensitive information.
But just because 23andMe has gone bankrupt doesn't mean your personal information has evaporated in cyberspace. Someone else will likely acquire it.
So essentially what that means is the acquiring company has to uphold the same standards to the information that 23andMe has already put in place, but users should be cognizant that there likely might be a transfer of that information and understand who that third-party acquirer is meant to be.
In the digital age, data has become a necessary commodity. Users can't take advantage of most products and services unless they provide their personal information.
Data really is the new oil. So sometimes, you know, you can't interact with a website or you can't interact with a product unless you give over the information that they require.
Host of What the Hack, Adam Levin, says DNA is the most sensitive of all data.
So because of the very sensitive nature of this information, unless it is under your absolute control or you're worried about the fact that anyone else who may have it is in a position to misuse it, then where you can delete it, you should absolutely delete it.
Late last year, 23andMe laid off 200 employees and stopped development for all therapies. 23andMe secured a financing commitment of about $35 million on Sunday and will continue to operate during the sale process. The company listed assets and estimated liabilities between $100 million and $500 million. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up, teenagers in the Pacific Palisades are raising money to rebuild after the devastating wildfires, and they're encouraging others to join their efforts. And in women's college hoops, how an injury to USC star JuJu Watkins could shake up the tournament. Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. More than 2 months since wildfires incinerated the Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles, communities are working to rebuild. Ever since the flames were extinguished, a group of teenagers in the area has been trying to motivate other young people to join the recovery effort. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
The embers may be out, but the damage is done. This is what remains of the Pacific Palisades today. Once a picturesque oceanside community, charred hollow homes, rubble, and debris are all that remain. Now a group of teens from the area are trying to raise money to help rebuild when things are cleaned up.
And this is our community, this is where we grew up, so this is what we're really passionate about. So we want to make it to what it was again, not just for us, but for the next generation of kids to have the same great sense of community that we had.
Build Back Pali's motto: rebuild, restore, revive. The three best friends, Jake Yoon, Dylan Fulmer, and Mason Cohen, came up with the idea in the immediate aftermath of the fire. So far, they've raised over $100,000 by themselves.
Just seeing our community in shambles with the fire devastating it, it really inspired us to make a change, and we hope to inspire all the kids around the world at our age that they don't just have to sit there and watch, that they can make a difference as well.
For Jake Yoon, returning to where his home used to be for the first time was surreal. All that remains today is a hole in the ground.
It's really shocking to me to see this place that I've grown up for the past 15 years leveled to the ground, and also all my neighbors that we're close with and all their properties being destroyed. And I think that was the most shocking part about this, and I think that's what really drives me to want to help other people that are going through the same thing that I did.
Andrew Yoon, Jake's father, says the experience is a lot for anyone to handle, especially young people. He believes the boys' fundraising effort is inspiring adults too.
My son and his friends have gone through a lot, from COVID and now to this. It's really inspirational. It shows their resilience, it shows that they're focused, and it really shows how they want to just give back something.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on right now, but let's start in women's college hoops as USC star JuJu Watkins was carried off the court with a leg injury in last night's win and didn't return. What is her status going forward?
Yeah, it would appear she's lost for the season. Now, USC spokesperson said she was going to have season-ending surgery and immediately start rehabilitation. Did not actually specify the injury now. So how it happened, she was just dribbling down the court. There were a couple of defenders next to her. She kind of planted her foot and her leg kind of bent awkwardly. She immediately went down, was in a lot of pain. It seemed really clear. Could not put any weight on her legs. She had to be carried off. This pretty much screamed, bad injury from the start. Now her team, the Trojans, still went on to win the game. They beat Mississippi State. This is the second round of the NCAA tournament. They blew them out without her. So they're now in the Sweet 16. They'll play Kansas State actually this Saturday. But this really shakes up the NCAA tournament for the women's field. If they get past Kansas State, I'm not even sure that if they're favored to win that game. It's on a neutral court. I don't know about the next game. They would play the winner of 2-seed UConn against the 3-seed Oklahoma, let alone get to the Final Four. I mean, she was in consideration for National Player of the Year. She might still win it. She was All-American this year. She averaged 24 points per game. This is a very significant loss. Really alters the women's tournament here.
Well, shifting now to golf news, the Atlanta Drive GC rallied to beat the New York Golf Club last night in the finals of the Tiger Woods-founded TGL League. What is the format for the finals?
So this is a best of 3. So tonight you actually have the second match. Now, if New York wins to tie it up, then we're going to have a third match right after the match tonight. So it could be 2 matches tonight, starting at 7 o'clock. Now, the winning team gets the first ever Sophie Cup plus a $9 million cash prize to be split among the players. The second place team still gets $4.5 million. Now, the Tiger Woods team, the Jupiter Lynx, did not actually make the playoffs. Even if they did, you know, Woods already announced he had surgery to repair that ruptured Achilles a couple weeks ago. So it would have been extremely, of course, unlikely that he would have played. But he has not announced any kind of recovery schedule, except his doctor said he would expect to make a full recovery. In any case, though, the first match starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. If there is going to be a second match, it would be at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Those are both on ESPN.
Moving to college football news, Stanford announced today they've fired head coach Troy Taylor. Now, the timing is somewhat curious since their season ended back in November. What reason was given?
Yeah, well, this is Andrew Luck, who's the program's general manager. He didn't clearly say why, but he's the one who announced this. He said, quote, "In recent days, there's been a significant attention to Stanford investigations in previous years related to Coach Taylor," end quote. Now, last week, ESPN reported 2 outside firms found Taylor had bullied and belittled female staffers and sought to have an NCAA compliance officer removed after she warned him of rules violations. Now, after the report came out, Stanford said Taylor had complied with the investigation, was committed to improving his behavior. Taylor himself said he was using the investigations as a learning opportunity. But of course, 4 months after the season ends, to make a change like this, you would think it's not really performance on the field related. Now, he went 3-9 in his 2 seasons there. In any case, the Cardinals are definitely on the look for a new head coach now.
And shifting gears to college basketball, Drake star guard Bennett Sturt says he plans to enter the transfer portal and will follow head coach Ben McCollum to Iowa.
Yeah, he made this announcement on the Field of 68 podcast. It's a nice get from McCollum, who just left Drake after 1 season for Iowa. Now, he and Sturts have quite a history. Last year, Sturts followed him from Northwest Missouri State to Drake. He was one of 4 starters to do so. It paid off. Drake went 30-1-4 this year, won the Missouri Valley Conference regular season and tournament title, made the second round of the NCAA tournament, all in McCollum's only year. He then left for Iowa right after the season ended. Now, Sturts, meanwhile, he won the Conference Player of the Year. He might have actually gotten to the NBA draft radar. Now, ESPN actually has him listed as a possible second-round choice should he declare for the draft, but it looks like he's going to take his senior season at Iowa instead. But of course, he can always come back. He can always come out next year, of course.
Always a lot to watch for there. Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
And we turn our attention now to space and NASA's latest pictures of a star being born. The James Webb Space Telescope has captured some truly stunning images of the so-called cosmic tornado. This plume of gas and dust has been nicknamed the cosmic tornado because of its appearance. It's an outflow produced by jets launched from a nearby forming star. The outflows can extend for light years. This one is located at some 625 light years from Earth in a part of the galaxy where new stars are being born. NASA's retired Spitzer Space Telescope captured the same shot in 2006, but it was too fuzzy to make out the background galaxy and other details. Launched in 2021 as the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, Webb is the largest and most powerful observatory ever launched into space. And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.